At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jonathan Stoops. Mr. Stoops, we are honored that you are here with us today, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of you being here today. As Jesse mentioned, my name is Jonathan Stoops. I am a Learning Management Officer in the Leadership Development Directorate with HCS. And my primary duties involve running lead. That's my day job. But I do have opportunities to come share some of these sessions with you guys. Background-wise, just briefly, 15 years with the VA. 8 of those years spent in supervision. Prior to joining the VA, I did teach high school and at the collegiate level, high school English. That was rough, and then leadership development at the college level. So happy to be with you guys today and talk about what I believe to be is a really important topic, especially right now. Crucial conversations. We're gonna really dive into what this is. We want to identify crucial conversation. We want to prepare for a crucial conversation. We want to have some strategies to put in place for each aspect, like actually navigating that conversation, being in the moment in those conversations. And then we're going to look at some exercises, some scenarios that we can explore in terms of crucial conversations. It's an interesting topic. We actually just had my lead cohort that just started a few weeks ago. We had Mr. Ron Burke, the executive director for Office of Policy and Oversight, was on our kickoff call. And he shared that there's a general need, right? That he perceived a general need for civil discourse or civility in the workplace. I mean, even just kindness, right? And it's almost like a post-COVID pandemic hangover or something, that we have this awkward feeling in the workplace and at home where we've spent so much time being distanced from one another, communicating via email or, communicating online, the videos, the comments, the anonymous world that we get drawn into so much of the time. And we've lost that ability to connect with folks and in the workplace to be our best in serving veterans, to be our best in being a peer or being a leader. We need to return to those basic fundamentals of how we engage in this civil discourse. And then really, when it's an important topic, how do we have that conversation in a way that benefits all parties, right? So an overview of our session today is really just, we're hitting the crucial conversations, what it is, preparation for those crucial conversations. We don't always get to prepare, but we want to, if we have the opportunity to prepare for those conversations, how do we prepare? And then some strategies, and again, as I said, some exercises or scenarios at the end. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like for each of you to take a moment. If you've got a notepad handy and a pen, perfect. If you don't, grab one, or even just open a Word document if you've got another monitor over where you can take some notes, because I do want you guys to take some notes as we go through this. And then there are going to be some opportunities where I'm asking you to identify some specific scenarios for you. And I want you to be able to jot down your thoughts, and I'd also probably like to issue you a challenge when we've wrapped this session up. All right, so where's all this come from? There is a book out there called Crucial Conversations. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's really a seminal text for a lot of folks in terms of navigating the business world and in terms of action-oriented, right? This is not leadership philosophy. This is not deep thoughts on, how we build our professional resume. This is the nuts and bolts of how we approach tough conversations. And, you think it's a conversation you don't want to have, that probably means it's a crucial conversation. It's important. So this book, Crucial Conversations, is available in TMS through Skillsoft Books. So you don't need to pay for it. It's out there. But I'm going to hit the highlights for you today and hopefully give you a crash course in how you handle these particularly difficult conversations. So step one, we need to be able to identify a crucial conversation, right? It's certainly important that that we prepare when we've got those opportunities, but sometimes we're mid-conversation and we need to be able to recognize, oh, there is weight to this conversation. I know I've had opportunities with my time in leadership to be midstream with an employee and we're discussing something maybe marginally difficult, whether it's performance related or whatnot, and it transitions into, major life issues and things that are contributing to performance. And, there's got to be that trigger that I go, oh, this is an important conversation. And, if I'm actively listening and I'm engaged in that conversation, I'm much more likely to see those cues and acknowledge that this conversation is probably more important than, your run of the mill, hey, how's it going? How was the game this weekend? These conversations happen all the time. They happen in the workplace. They happen on teams, which is tough. They happen in the home. If you're like me and you're the parent of teenagers, multiple teenagers, then you are very aware that you have crucial conversations. I actually had one at 2:30 in the morning this morning with my son. So, it's good that we work on these skills. So fun video for you guys. I just want to jump in, but crucial conversation.
Hey, how's it going, man? So I'm supposed to tell you that you're not on the planning committee anymore, and it's probably because your ideas suck. Your ideas are not what we would call good, useful, having any value at all. I think they're great, but everybody else thinks they're terrible. You have ideas only a mother could love. Your mother. No, it's not that your ideas are bad. Can I text it? Yeah, I'll text it to you. But just be sure not to read this until after work. Or until you get home, after some good news. I'm sorry no one thinks you're fun. I think it's really admirable that you would continue to say such bad ideas out loud in the face of so much justifiable opposition. It's so inspiring. Good talk. I feel so much better. Is that a new keyboard? No?
So obviously that's mostly for fun, but I know I've got some of my cohort members in here. Right off the bat, there are so many things that are wrong with that, right? We could say almost every time I ask my cohorts or one of the classes that I'm doing crucial conversation, they say, okay, what did you do wrong? And they say everything, which is pretty true. But, if we pinpoint those things, it can really inform how we approach these conversations. But let's stick with how do we know it's a crucial conversation at this point? So the authors of Crucial Conversations, the book, tell us that it's really the intersection of opposing opinions, strong emotions, and high stakes. Now, how we define those varies, it's situational. But if you're walking into a conversation with a fellow employee or with son or daughter, and you disagree, you have opposing opinions on what's the right answer or what's happening in a situation, and one or both of you is emotionally elevated, right? We're feeling our feels, and then the outcome means something, right? Now, high stakes could be whether or not someone's grounded for the weekend, or it could be somebody's job moving forward, right? Whether or not they maintain a job. But when those things intersect, you're definitely talking about a crucial conversation. Okay. Now, when do these conversations happen? All the time, right? We're giving difficult feedback on someone's work. That one's one that I have navigated time and again. And it's one that I've seen done really well here in the VA. I've also seen it done very poorly, even with myself. Explaining to a team member why you felt offended. This is really common, right? This is something we deal with all the time. And maybe in the past, it wasn't something that seemed as difficult as it does now, but in a hybrid workforce, or maybe one or both members are entirely remote, having this conversation can just be significantly more difficult, right? Expressing ourselves in a way that we're being understood, and listening in a way that we're actually engaging in what's being said. That's difficult. Talking to an unhappy stakeholder. I can remember back from my days in Waco when I was first transitioning into leadership and I was an assistant coach there, running a post team. And I fielded more than one conversation with a POA. The Waco POAs are located in the building. They're on the first floor, and it's a phenomenal relationship. They have great access to you. You have great access to them, and it can be so beneficial. But there were some tough conversations or some argumentative conversations about rating decisions and outcomes and different perceptions of what the manual said, right? Those are tough conversations. And if you don't treat them like a crucial conversation, the next thing you know, the directors heard about it, and maybe there's a congressional inquiry because they heard about it. And so handling those conversations on the front end, probably a little better off. Now this one, giving an unfavorable performance review. I can't imagine a more routine and obvious crucial conversation. During my most recent session with our lead cohort, we talked about, the impulse to be casual, connect with an employee who might be struggling. Hey, Bill, we should connect. I saw that your numbers have been slipping. Do you have some time to meet on Friday afternoon at 2:30? That's cool. Let's say it's Wednesday when you throw this out there. What's Bill going to do for the next 48 hours? He's going to freak out, right? He's going to be worried about that conversation and why you're having it on Friday afternoon. And literally that little snippet, that little connection moment where you're trying to be totally authentic and connect with this employee and help them find ways to be more successful, turns into what should have been a crucial conversation, right? Because we weren't as aware of how they might be receiving that information, weren't as aware of our authority in that role if you're a supervisor, given that kind of insight. Now, some of you might say, well, that's being overly sensitive. The reality is that we all have a part in these conversations. It takes two to have that conversation. So, we both need to come into these conversations not making assumptions and, being as aware as possible of how they might be received. Okay, this one, explaining to your supervisor why you disagree. The flip side of that, giving an unfavorable performance review potentially, or maybe it's a policy change or a change to the SOP and how you're moving work or rating a claim. That's a tough conversation. And if you go into it wrong, there's a danger or fear, right, that you might end up being judged or perceived as that employee that's just always complaining, always angry, or you come into it right with the right perspective, and maybe you can make a difference. Maybe that supervisor hears you and acknowledges that you've got a point and there's something we need to explore there, right? So I mentioned I wanted you guys to grab a piece of paper or open a Word document off to the side. This question at the bottom: what is one conversation you need to have that you have been avoiding? I'd like for you to write that down. And it doesn't have to be work specific. It could be something at home, a conversation you want to have with your spouse or significant other, a conversation you want to have with one of your children, a conversation with a parent that you've been putting off. And it's just because it's going to be awkward, right? It's going to be awkward or hard. Or in the workplace, conversation with that fellow coworker that you've been struggling to get along with. You're not saying anything. You're leaving it alone because you don't want to be confrontational, right? Well, this class is not on confrontational conversations. It's on crucial conversations. I'd like you to jot that reference down, right? That one conversation, put that over to the side. And then as we move through these topics, I want you to think about how you can apply the concepts we're describing to that specific conversation. All right. I said our second objective here was to prepare for a crucial conversation. The most important aspect in preparation is going to be self-reflection. So self-awareness, Daniel Goleman, that did emotional intelligence and primal leadership, has done a lot of research. And basically, the more successful people are in the workplace and the more money they earn, the higher their emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence starts with being self-aware, right? What's the most challenging part of a crucial conversation for you? You have a certain tendency. You have a tendency to get elevated with certain people, emotionally elevated, or a tendency to rush through your words and stop listening, right? You're not really engaged in the active listening process because this is important and it's difficult and you want to get it out. Well, you need to be aware of those elements. And I'm gonna touch on this a little bit further in another slide, but being self-aware, knowing your strengths and weaknesses and being authentic about them is going to be the first step in preparation to having that crucial conversation, right? Now, some preparing. Got to start with what's the objective of this conversation? I think all too often, I've mentored quite a few assistant coaches coming into the VBA, and now been working with assistant coaches and coaches coming through SMT. And one of the most common mistakes that a new supervisor makes is asserting themselves in a conversation to assist an employee, but in the process, they disconnect from that employee, right? They want to say, hey, you're doing a great job. Let's keep pushing. I think you can do even more. But instead of saying that, they challenge them in a way that's offensive, that makes that employee feel like they're out to get them, right? We need to keep in mind, what's the objective of the conversation? Start there. What do you want to accomplish? And put that at the center of your planning process. The second thing is going to be know your audience. Now, we're going to touch on the DISC model on the next slide, but different people have different preferences. I don't know if you're familiar with the platinum rule, but instead of the golden rule saying treat people the way you want to be treated, the platinum rule says treat people the way they want to be treated. Now that takes some awareness beyond the self, right? Okay, I have my challenges, my difficulties, I know what those are, but examining another individual that you're going to have this conversation with, this crucial conversation, and saying, what are their preferences? And the DISC is an exceptional way for you to develop the skills to maybe know more about what their preferences might be. But we'll get to that on the next slide. Okay, what information or data do you need to have on hand? All too often we enter a conversation, we want to say, you've been late 7 times coming home from basketball games, or using a reference to my son. You've been late 7 times. Well, have they? And did we talk about it? Do I have text messages? Like, again, in the workplace, if we're going to talk about employee performance, don't just shoot from the hip, right? Let's have the information in front of us so that we can explore that and look at that. And then some other pieces, consider location and environment. Now, I'm going to share a story. There might be there are a few folks that have heard this story before, I'm sure, but attending a training with a lot of young folks, and man, it was rough. It was a very slow training. It was very early in the morning, and an employee who was actually a really good employee, but he was young. He started to nod off, started to fall asleep. It wasn't the first time, and really, it was an opportunity to have a crucial conversation with that employee. But our point here is consider the location and environment. Supervisor, in that moment, jumped up out of their seat and said, "If you can't stay awake, get on your feet." To which the whole room was shocked and awe, like, oh, wow, what just happened? And terribly embarrassing for that employee, for sure, right? It was a horrible way to address that situation or scenario. And it's one of those things. Consider location and environment. That video we watched at the beginning, it's fun, right? It's meant to be fun, but he's calling a guy out in public. That happens, right? Often we think we have a casual relationship with someone and we can use humor, maybe a little sarcasm to challenge our buddy to do better. But instead, we're mocking them in public, right? Or we're calling them out in front of their peers. And my reaction, my impulse is not to agree. It's not to hear you, it's to be hurt, right? It's to be offended in that moment. I don't have any desire to do better in that moment. My only desire is to shut down, right? And then finally, practice. Now, this is an interesting one. How many of you practice before you participate in a job interview? I'm pretty sure that's the vast majority of you. If it's not all of you, those of you who say no should probably start practicing before job interviews, right? Those are, by the way, very big, formal, crucial conversations. But practicing these conversations can really help. At least practicing where you're going to start. Now, you can't script an entire crucial conversation. It doesn't work like that. It's a free-flowing conversation. You don't know what they're going to say, but you can anticipate some of their questions or concerns. And so preparing for that, being aware of what they might say, is really helpful in being ready, right? So here on the slide, I will open the conversation in an honest and measured way by saying, we've got some examples. I'm concerned about, want to discuss it with you. Right? It's pretty even keeled. Really, I'm watching my tone. I'm curious about your perspective on this email that was sent. Just want to talk it over with you. You got a chance. Right? Giving that person room to be right, to have a voice. I noticed you've been running late this week. Can you tell me about what's happening? Right. I'm giving people an opportunity to feel safe entering that conversation. So those are some important tips in terms of preparing. I mentioned both the self-awareness and the awareness of others and tying DISC into that. Now, this is not a DISC training. I've probably done DISC training for many of you that are on this call, or you've had DISC training with Miss Mara Shaughnessy or Miss Tammy Crotto. We love DISC in VBA, and frankly, because it's a phenomenal tool. It's a really easy way to get some insight into how you prefer to communicate and how your peers prefer to communicate. So if you're familiar, the DISC model goes through 4 types, right? And we're all a mix of the 4 types, but folks who are high D, the dominant style, are going to be, bluff. They want the bottom line up front, right? Assertive, maybe aggressive, dominant. They want to get the job done. They don't care about all the touchy-feely stuff. Influence, the eyes, the influencers. They're excited, right? They want to DJ the party. They want to MC the party. They want to be up front. They want to talk about it. They care about relationships. They are emotional creatures. They are positive. They're excited. Positive, maybe into a fault. I'm a high I, so I know this, right? No, I didn't fail. Why would I think? No, of course not. It was just a little bump, right? That's your high I. And then your S, that's the majority of the US population. Look, they're relational, but they don't need to MC the party. They care about people first, but they don't really care about conflict. Our S's struggle with having crucial conversations, right? They're going to be uncomfortable and they're going to need to feel valued and heard in that conversation. And then finally, the C's. The C's care about data. C's are our accountants, often some of our best workers in the field in the VBA because they're technicians, because they're analyzing hundreds of pages of documents, maybe more, right? They know this legal code backwards and forwards, the CFRs. Some of those folks, they're high C's, and high C's, they want the data. They don't want the emotion. They do want the time to process information. So I say all this to say that you fall somewhere in there. So that could inform who you are entering into a crucial conversation. Who you're having that crucial conversation with is also going to fall in there somewhere. If I'm having a crucial conversation with someone that's obviously a high D, very dominant personality, very assertive, I need to come into that conversation probably not being super touchy-feely. I probably need to come into that crucial conversation trying to take some of the emotion or all of the emotion out of it. Right? Let's just talk about the facts. What's going on here? Right? Because that high D doesn't need me to value their humanity, I guess I should say. They want me to come in and have the conversation, get to the point. What's the point? What are you trying to say? But somebody who is a high S, it's going to be the complete opposite, right? We're going to need to come into this conversation a little gentler, but it's good stuff there. Now, during the conversation, we talked about preparation. During a crucial conversation, it's important that you establish a relationship for that conversation. Okay? You can't go into a crucial conversation and always just assert facts, because by its nature, a crucial conversation is emotionally laden, right? We're talking about that intersection of high stakes and emotions. We need to be very cognizant of the person we're having this crucial conversation with feeling that we're not attacking, that we value them. So the crucial conversations text, and again, this is driven by research. So I know some of you folks that are high Ds out there, you're going to really struggle with some of these concepts, but you need to hear it, you need to see it, and please take time to think about it. Step one, set your intentions and start with the heart. If you don't like the term start with your heart, then be trustworthy. Establish trust. How can I be of service? How can I find value in this conversation for both of us? And so where do I start with my words? I mean, it's vital that we not enter this conversation, and which we all too often do, as a conflict, right? Like, I'm going to war. I'm so nervous about this conversation, and I'm really scared to have this conversation. And so I walk into the conversation and I drop the hammer. Billy, you've been failing, and we need to talk about it. Okay. Now, I'm expressing my own anxiety in this, right? I need you to do better. I've been looking at your numbers, and they're not good enough. Billy has no idea that I care. Billy is seeing my intensity, my anxiety. He's not seeing my heart, and I have not established trust. It doesn't matter that inside I feel that I care. Billy's a great employee. Part of the reason I'm so fired up is because I desperately want Billy to be successful. But if I approach it like that, with my anxiety and anger and frustration all out there, I've negated the potential for trust, right? So again, approach it like, how can I be of service? One of my mentors back in the day would say, we're killing it with kindness. Killing it with kindness. And that was at the time I was learning to navigate some of these relationships as a supervisor. And there were times when employees were just struggling. And sometimes the fact that they were struggling made them defensive, upset. They would lash out, which would in turn give me the impulse to lash out or to be derogatory, or just to, fine, you're going to do your thing. But that mentor's advice, killing it with kindness, was, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they have a different perspective. Start with kindness, establish trust, because otherwise they're not going to hear anything you say after that. And you're not really leaving a lot of opportunities for someone to change direction if you haven't established that trust. All right. Sorry, how can I be of service to both of us? Again, I'm looking for an opportunity for resolution. If I'm having a crucial conversation with my wife about balancing the budget, I'm not looking to punish her. That's silly. I'm looking to create a solution that we both agree on and benefit from, right? That's what matters. I care deeply about her. I don't need to threaten her. I don't need to put her in her place. Well, the same is true in a workplace relationship. You don't need to threaten someone. You need to find resolution, right? Again, what do I not want to happen? It's good to consider that that emotional elevation that can occur, and it really shuts down our higher brain function, right? It shuts down that higher processing, and we don't want that to happen. So again, planning to use the right terms to establish trust from the beginning is essential to moving forward with a healthy conversation. All right, learn to look. We've probably all heard the term active listening. This is, it's part of it, right? But we want to look for neutral ground. We're in the middle of a conversation that is crucial and has the potential to be confrontational. We want to look for neutral ground. For example, one of these conversations about performance, you know, your numbers are slipping, my numbers are slipping, you're calling me out, whatever the case is. What do we both want to accomplish? What can we both agree on? I think we probably both agree that you know, I want to stay in this job. Probably both agree that we want to serve veterans. Both agree that, you know, keeping a paycheck going is best for my family, right? Those are obvious common ground connectors. So look for those and identify those as you're in the midst of this conversation so that you can navigate there and find some stable ground to continue the trust, right? Look for signs that people don't feel safe. Psychological safety is a huge topic right now. And there are a million reasons why. But when people feel threatened, it's really hard to make progress, right? If not impossible. If you feel threatened, you're not going to engage in those higher level brain functions. You're not going to be analytical and think reflectively about your actions and whether or not what you did really was inappropriate or, oh, I can see how that could be offensive. You're not going to go there if you don't feel safe in the conversation. So if you started off with an intense tone and the first thing you did was call them out for something they said, it's going to be tough for them to come full circle to, you know, that humbling moment of saying, yeah, I see what I did there. I totally understand. I would not like to experience that, and I will not use that phrasing again. Right? They're not going to come there if they're not feeling safe in the conversation. And then watch for your own emotional response. This is all about awareness in the midst of the conversation. We all have that amygdala hijack that happens, right? When you're in the middle of that conversation, the amygdala controls our emotional response. And if your amygdala gets triggered, you've got a bunch of hormones getting dumped into your system. And it's hard to moderate your tone at that point in time. It's hard to choose the right words. It's hard to maintain objectivity and be an active listener and be engaged in what they're actually saying. All of that gets really hard when our emotions get involved. So it's important that we're watching our own emotions and that we're making an intentional effort not to trigger our conversation partner's emotions, right? Look for signs that they don't feel safe. That psychological safety, if they feel, you know what, actually in the chat, what are some signs that you would throw out there that people might not feel safe in the conversation? And I'm not saying that they feel like physically threatened, but what might they be doing, saying, or demonstrating? Backing away in the
We're
conversation.
getting a lot of
silence.
body language type comments, Stoops, things like rolling eyes, avoiding eye contact, leaving the situation, not engaging, closed body language, fidgeting, just plain silence. And these are things that, of course, we can, if we're working remotely, we can use our technology to our advantage to be able to see what's happening. And silence we can hear from wherever we are, withdrawal from the conversation, changes in tone of voice, one-worded responses, shifting eye contact, folding those arms. So being aware of, like you said, that awareness of what normal is for someone behavior-wise so that you can see these changes, that's really helpful. And someone had mentioned fight or flight responses earlier, backing away. Yeah.
For sure. By the way, I think I failed to indicate earlier, that's Miss Tammy Crotto, also a learning management officer with HCS and our leadership development directorate. And she's here to help me track that chat today. And we'll bring up some of your questions for me when we get to the end. But yeah, body language, you guys nailed it. Like body language, maybe rolling the eyes, right? All of that, it's not an indicator that they don't like you. It's an indicator that they don't feel safe in that conversation. And if you get to that point, we need to backtrack. We need to look again for that neutral ground. We need to use some phrasing to reestablish trust, right? But yeah, absolutely. The body language, the words, if their words are harsh, if their words are confrontational, if their words are dismissive, any of that would indicate that they feel threatened, right? That they don't feel safe. And, some of us have a higher propensity to be defensive than others. I'm absolutely one of them, right? I absolutely have a tendency to be defensive in the face of criticism. It's just something I'm aware of, right? A lot of folks do. And if you do have a tendency to be defensive, you know the signs, right? You know the signs when you start to feel like somebody's after you. And if we're on the other end of that conversation, anything we can do or say to ensure that they don't hit that point where the amygdala is engaged and the emotional response is running them over, anything you can do to establish that level of trust from the beginning, it's absolutely going to smooth out the conversation moving forward and give you a shot at making a difference, right? All right. Pause to build safety. Making it safe, the pause is really important. And if you're in the midst of that conversation, the amygdala hijack has happened, it's not inappropriate to stop, to breathe, to relax. Some of you have done any of the resiliency or meditation practices, you can do it right now. Put your feet flat on the ground, your hands on your desk, eyes closed. You know, 5 breaths a minute. But in the midst of the conversation, obviously be aware of your peer in this conversation, but taking deep breaths, feet flat on the ground, that can be done without overt messaging, right? That's not going to send them the message, but you're taking a moment to ensure that safety for yourself and for them. Now, I love this. Listen to understand. Don't listen to communicate. I hope you can know what I'm saying by that. Listen to communicate is listening to then provide a response. This one's a tough one for me with my kids. I need to not listen to then reiterate what they need to do. I need to listen to understand their perspective. We're going to get to this on the next slide, but they have their own narrative going. They have their own thought processes that they are consumed by. And if I am only paying attention to the solution that I've identified in my mind, I'm not open to what they're actually saying, to their perception of what they're actually experiencing, right? So listen to understand. Also, at this point in the conversation and building this safety, take time to mirror or paraphrase what they're saying, reframe what you're hearing, right? Take their words. So, for example, Tammy and I are in the midst of conflict, and she's unloading about how I failed to support her at the last offsite, and it's tough for me in the midst of that. This is totally made up. Tammy and I rock the offsites together, but totally made up. But if we're in the midst of that situation, and I don't pause, right, when she's emotional and elevated, if I don't pause, take a breath, I'm liable to get elevated. In addition to that, I can stop. Okay, Tammy, what I hear you saying is that when we taught that DISC course and I didn't empower you to teach those slides on the I section for influencers, that you felt that I was invalidating you. Is that what you're saying? right? I'm taking a moment to rephrase and make sure that I understand what's actually being communicated. That does a number of things. One, it can help alleviate and limit that emotional response. Two, it informs the other person that you're paying attention, right? When I stop and reframe or rephrase, it lets the other person in that conversation know that I'm really trying to get to a solution here because I'm paying attention. I was picking up what you're putting down. Or you can do another thing here. It can clarify the direction, right? If maybe I didn't understand what you were saying, or the heart of the issue that's generating these emotions, I wasn't, maybe they weren't expressing it well, and so I wasn't hearing it. But when I rephrased and reframed, they go, no, that's not really the issue. The issue is really the way you said this. Wow. By rephrasing and reframing, I've given them an opportunity to provide clarity, right? So again, breathe, relax, adjust your tone, slow down, find ways to build that safety, and make sure you're restating their words so that you're finding that clear direction and you're listening to understand. Now, I love narratives. Narratives as a tool for developing leaders, narratives as a tool for leading. Narratives in this scenario, in crucial conversations, is really about what's the story I'm telling myself about a situation versus what's the story you're telling yourself about a situation. And we both need to understand those narratives, right? We make assumptions in our own narratives. So if I'm in the midst of a conflict with an employee who's not meeting performance expectations, performance standards, and what I see is their anger and frustration. They voice their concerns about the standards themselves on numerous occasions, lashed out during team meetings, or said the training's terrible. It's why it's never good enough, and all these things. And so in my position, if I'm this mythical supervisor, I'm seeing a lot of anger and animosity. So the narrative I might start telling myself is that employee is disengaged, doesn't do the work, and they're always complaining. They're always upset. They're not even looking for solutions, right? That might be the narrative I'm telling myself, but I'm making assumptions there, right? I'm letting my own perceptions drive their story. So in the midst of this conversation, we need to get curious, not judgmental. And this is a really important strategy. It's actually a strategy I've tried hard to incorporate in my parenting. I have some tough ADHD brilliant boys, and sometimes they make impulsive decisions that I do not understand. And so I'm really working on getting curious and not judgmental, because if I start from judgmental, they shut down, right? Or they elevate. Teenage boy emotions, there it goes. And we're certainly not making progress then. Once we're elevated, you know what, we're going to table it. We'll come back to it in a couple hours. Let's talk about it again, right? But if I get curious instead of judgmental, I give them an opportunity to tell their story. Why that led to that. And it may not justify what happened, but if I'm listening and I'm engaged, it will provide some understanding. Now I'm gonna look for the neutral ground. I'm gonna look for the places where we can agree. And then we're gonna get to the last slide, but then we'll move towards finding some action steps that we can agree. And this last piece, work for clarity, not confusion. And I've got another fun video to share. It's just a silly video, but we need to be really clear in the midst of this discussion and conversation, this crucial conversation, that the messages are getting delivered and received. Like I said, we're reframing, rephrasing, making sure we understand. We're being engaged listeners, because if we don't, we're going to end up with confusion, and we're just going to end up with people who really don't know what happened in the conversation. So
that was my weekend, nothing special. What about you? You seem rather chipper for a Monday.
Today is a good day. It's my performance review.
Wait a minute. You're excited about the performance review?
My next meeting is a one-on-one. I have to deliver a performance review.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's with Matt.
Oh, I can see why you're so depressed.
Man, I'm stoked about this one. Because last time Melanie gave me kind of a bad review.
Last time I gave him an extremely negative review.
What exactly did she say?
You know, mumbo-jumbo manager speak.
I couldn't have been more clear.
Like needing a little touch-up here and there.
His appearance was sloppy, he was passive and unmotivated,
Maybe learn some more stuff.
and the quality of his work was completely substandard.
And we talked about my future.
I also said that I didn't see much of a future for him.
Dude, you have to read between the lines, but she was majorly hinting that I could go places.
I don't think he's gonna make it to the end of the year anyway.
With a little spit and polish, no big deal. So that's what I did. Got myself some spit and polish. Buddy, you're looking at Mr. Improved.
If anything, he's gotten worse. I don't know which is more objectionable, his social deficiencies or his technical incompetencies.
I mean, I busted my hump this last year. I even took some night classes at the community college.
I can see why you're so enthused about things.
It's more than that. I think I'll finally get that promotion I deserve. And believe me, with a new baby on the way, I could use all the cash I could get.
I'm putting Matt on probation, and that means no yearly bonus, but fortunately I hear his wife has a good job.
Especially with my wife losing her job and all.
Sorry to hear about that, mate. Tell you what, you give me a call after the review and we'll celebrate over lunch or something.
Yay.
Okay.
Cheerio.
Well, call me for lunch later. I have a feeling you're gonna need to take a break.
Well, Matt, are you ready?
You bet. Now, I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, I know. And maybe it's just nerves because my wife lost her job and all. But you'll see I deserve that promotion.
Promotion?
Yes. And I have you to thank. You know that little pep talk last time? And with being a new daddy and all. Anyway, I'm just so excited to hear what you have to say.
Facing a crucial conversation? Vital Smarts can help.
So again, the video is fun, but it really does expose what happens, right? When we don't work our way through in a feedback session, in a conversation with the right elements. So Matt, obviously, he didn't hear what she thought she delivered. And I'm not sure she delivered what he needed to hear, right? So we need to work for clarity, not confusion. You've established trust. You've found neutral ground. When I say we start with the heart and we build trust, I'm not saying that we use supervisor mumbo jumbo, right? Or the little spit and polish. No, we're going to, if we're providing feedback, we're going to provide specific feedback, right? Having a crucial conversation doesn't mean avoiding the issue. There's no resolution there either. So I've got some dialogue tools here for you. It's literally just in the midst of the conversation, a dialogue tool, it's explanation, right? Paraphrase, acknowledge first, then question. The other person needs to feel that he or she has been heard, right? We take that moment to say, okay, Billy, I hear what you're saying. Let me see if I've got it right, okay? So check me here for a second. You're saying that. Avoid the words but, although, however, right? They tend to negate what came before. So instead use and, or just a new statement. You know, in general, Tommy, you're doing a great job, but I've had an issue with your performance these past 2 weeks. Tommy did not hear you say that he's been doing a good job in general, right? You just negated what you said before. So be careful of that. Reframing, present an alternative way to look at something when the conversation's stuck. I do this with my boys all the time. It's an easier example with the home life, but if we're having this difficult conversation and what we're really talking about is getting homework done, I say, okay, so let's put it in my work context. If I were to tell my boss that I needed an extension for the third time on that project, right? I'm reframing, I'm putting it in another light that they might be more open to. Oh, yeah, I probably wouldn't go over very well, so I can see why it's not going over very well with my teacher, right? And then paint a picture. Again, this is that narrative component. Ask the other person to visualize an outcome of the scenario in context. What does it look like? What does it look like if we find resolution? Let's take your narrative. We've worked through, what's it look like where we can find a happy place? All right, I'm sorry, I'm running short on time. The final piece is the move to action. If you've established the trust, right? If you've learned to look and in the midst of the conversation, you're pausing to build safety, especially when the emotions get elevated. You can take that pause, breathe, relax. You're reframing, restating, acknowledging the words they've shared, and that you've understood the story, both the narrative maybe that you've assumed or the narrative they've assumed. And so it's somewhat more relatable. Doesn't mean there's agreement, but you do understand maybe why there's this disconnect. We move to action. Okay. If we've established this relationship together in this conversation, can we look at what's a mutually beneficial solution moving forward? Right? Where do they want to be moving forward? I love this tip. Pull rather than push a plan. So we want to get our boys to be more engaged in chores at home. We can have this crucial conversation where we're on the same page. We have the trust going. They understand that they need to do better. But rather than dictating a schedule, saying this is what we need to do at this point, this point, this point, this point, ask, what do you think would be the easiest way for you to be more engaged in chores? There's a specific chore that you like to do, right? Same thing in the workplace. What do you think would help you or enable you in terms of this training that you would benefit from? How would you like to have that training delivered? Or again, we're pulling the plan out by asking questions, not dictating the plan. That gets us the mutual buy-in in this crucial conversation as we move forward. And then check for buy-in, right? At the end, we've discussed it, next steps, we've pulled a plan together that's mutually agreed on. At the end, we need to make sure. So I feel like we've got a really good solution moving forward, or I feel like we're on the same page with some of these difficult topics. Are you on board with me? Do you feel like this is the way we can move forward? Do you feel good about how we're going to move forward with this? Right? We're checking for buy-in. So again, we want to have a crucial conversation that results in greater trust and buy-in. I did have another slide there. The gap between the way things are and where you want them to be. Again, asking questions to pull that plan out. What do you think we should do next? It's a great question to give them the opportunity to give voice. It might seem like you're putting them on the spot, but you're letting them have a voice. And yeah, then how does this sound? So we emailed out this slide deck to everybody that had pre-registered. We will, well, Jesse actually has taken attendance, so we'll send out the slide deck to the entire attendance list afterwards. But there's some powerful questions in here that I use and have used in mentoring before, and I think they're just really helpful. If you're having the conversation with folks, what does success look like here, right? These leading questions that get the other party involved in determining an outcome. What's your intention for this? With my kiddos, that next one, is there another choice you could make here? It's a great leading question, right? But gets their buy-in, gives them a voice. We have just 4 minutes. I have a scenario, but I don't think we've got time to go through it, Jesse. So I'm going to skip to the end. Again, we've provided the slide deck for you guys, but please, please, please complete the survey. That information does empower us to do a better job, whether it's positive or negative. Invite the comments, but I can't improve if you don't inform me of how we ought to improve. And certainly the things we're doing well, state those too, because that means we'll keep doing them. Really appreciate your guys' time today, and I will stick around for a few minutes to answer any questions, or maybe Tammy, if we've had any questions I can answer for the next 5 minutes or so, I can jump on those. But otherwise, I do want to respect everyone's time. If you need to depart, this training is over, and I really appreciate your investment in yourselves and your investment in our veterans by continuing to pursue these learning topics. I know it's not required that you be here, so that shows that you're committed to improving and being the best you that you can be. Thank you. Tammy, didn't we have any questions as we went through in there?
There were no questions, but there were just a whole lot of really positive comments and some great insights and observations. And I'm being inundated with thank yous at the moment, so I can't get back to where they were.
Yeah.
Let me
Awesome.
see if I can get this to show the other way. There we go. All right. So let's see. Great tools. Let me get back to where they were. I cannot get back there. There we go.
Yeah, that chat with this many
positivity.
people in the room, it moves quickly, and even when you try to scroll up, then the next thing you know, it's jumping ahead, jumping ahead.
I also saw lots of our lead participants in the class. Yeah, we talked about getting people on the same page and some tie-ins back to the disc types, how we want to make sure that we're all getting buy-in, building confidence in people's abilities to do things. And yes, Jesse just put the survey link up for those who are still on the call and did not have a government furnished cell phone to be able to use the QRE code. We've got the the book at the beginning. Can you explain if this training was based from that book? Yes, go ahead and mention that one. Definitely would have liked to have worked on the scenario. Those scenarios are great things to take back to talk through on your teams as well. And you'll have them in your slides.
Absolutely. Certainly appreciate everyone's investment and engagement.
And we will mail out that survey link along with after the fact as well.
Please, please, please take that survey, and we'll get the slide deck out to everyone if you didn't receive it before. So thanks, folks, and hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully I'll speak with you again soon.
Oh, one last question. Do we have any materials on crucial accountability?
Oh,
that's a good one. We might need to look into that one and get back to you.
That is a good one. We teach on accountability in our lead program and in our LEAP program because it's one of the many leadership competencies that OPM has identified for all government leaders, supervisors, managers, and so we do teach on that. But yeah, not a specific class on accountability. It's maybe something we could look into. Something you could put on the survey feedback. All right. Well, thank you, folks. Have a wonderful day.